The Mamdani momentum is taking the country by storm after his big New York City primary win in June shocked the Democratic establishment. Socialists like Zohran Mamdani are not just gaining popularity, but actually being recognized as serious candidates in elections across the nation. One of those key elections is the Minneapolis mayoral race, where Democratic Socialist State Senator Omar Fateh is now just 5 points behind incumbent Democratic Mayor Jacob Frey, who is seeking re-election for a third term. And like Mamdani, Fateh is no stranger to hateful attacks from the right. Since gaining popularity, he has been the subject of racist and Islamophobic tweets from MAGA influencers like libs of TikTok and even the late Charlie Kirk. But that's not the only hurdle Fateh's had to overcome, because he recently lost the endorsement of the Democratic Farmer Labour Party, the DFL, after Mayor Jacob Frey filed a formal challenge accusing the DFL convention of a flawed voting process. But Fateh is not backing down, with key endorsements from the Democratic Socialists of America and the Sunrise Movement, among others. His grassroots campaign continues to defy all odds and unite voters from many walks of life. So, can Omar Fateh actually be the next mayor of Minneapolis? He joins me now to discuss. Thank you so much for coming on Mehdi Unfiltered.
Thank you so much for having me.
You made history back in 2020 when you became the first Muslim and the first Somali American to join the Minnesota Senate, to be elected to the Senate. What made you take the leap from state senator to now running for the mayorship, the mayoralty of Minnesota's largest city?
Well, Minneapolis has been through a lot. It's been through a global pandemic, the murder of George Floyd, which actually also occurred in the district that I represent. A crisis in public safety and an affordable housing emergency. But at every turn, our mayor has failed to meet the moment, and he's blocked and vetoed solutions that would have supported renters, our essential workers, our immigrants, our unhoused neighbors, and he's been set on protecting the status quo rather than everyday people.
So let's dig into that. How does your vision for Minneapolis differ from incumbent Mayor Jacob Frey's? What are you looking to accomplish that he hasn't been able to accomplish in the 8 years he's been in office?
Absolutely. Well, following the murder of George Floyd, he pledged to reform public safety. And 5 years later, there's still no plan. Our vision of public safety includes one in which when you call 911, you get the appropriate response at every call. And that actually jives well with what I've been hearing at the Capitol. We've heard from law enforcement saying we can't respond to every single call. A city report came out showing that 47% of 911 calls can be diverted away from officers. And so we can have alternatives to policing, but we need to increase that funding, things like BCR, behavioral crisis response, mental health workers, so that we can have law enforcement that focuses on violent crime and does that job.
How worried are you that your opponents, Republican opponents, are simply going to say, when they hear you talking about 911 calls and different types of responses, well, you're defunding the police?
Well, what we've been hearing from people loud and clear across the city is that whether you're someone who wants to increase the police budget and have more officers, or you're on the other side of the spectrum, you want to defund or abolish. The reality is everyone is unhappy right now, everybody. And so our vision is one in which, yes, we have police officers that do respond to violent calls, but we have alternatives so that every single 911 call we know does not warrant an officer. We know, for example, the way we triage calls, it's not a police officer that's putting out a house fire. We have a firefighter doing that. And so we can think creatively and strategically in addressing a public safety system.
Many of us first heard of Mayor Frey back in 2020 after George Floyd's murder by the officers from the Minneapolis Police Department. Everyone saw his rather blundering response to the Black Lives Matter protest. He was booed out of one, I remember famously on camera. How would you have handled George Floyd's murder and the protest that came out of it differently to Mayor Frey if you had been mayor at the time?
I think not keeping things so insular within a select few and being very public and front-facing from the beginning. One of the larger issues that we had with the mayor is that he created such a toxic environment in how we discuss public safety, in which it's framed as if you're pro-police accountability, then you're anti-public safety. And we know that's just not the case. People want safe streets. People want their neighbors, their kids, their parents to be safe. We just lack a mayor that's willing to put in the work to do so.
In July, The mayor told the New York Times, "I'm willing to tell our own side, even my own supporters, what they don't want to hear. I support constructive debate as opposed to conformity. I don't just take the most leftist position by default. I have not seen that in Senator Fateh." How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, my response is that what of my ideas have been extreme? At the Capitol, I've fought hard for workers, for renters, for students. I was proud to get accomplished things like the North Star Promise, which provided tuition-free college for working-class families. I led on the fight for the Uber and Lyft legislation, in which provided the strongest rideshare protections for our Uber and Lyft drivers in the nation, on top of increased wages. And so our message has been consistently about those that the city and state has been left behind, and also work for working families. And we don't think that there's anything extreme about that, and our neighbors don't either.
Liking this video? Then don't just watch, hit like, share and subscribe. And tap the bell so you never miss a video or live show. But if you want early access to exclusive content, then you have to head to zeteo.com and subscribe now. You'll be supporting fearless, independent journalism. In 2024, Mayor Frey issued a record-breaking 8 vetoes as mayor, including he vetoed a ceasefire resolution and a statement of support for pro-Palestine student protesters. You yourself have called for a ceasefire, and the resolution passed 7-6 at the city council. Why do you think Frey ultimately issued these vetoes, and what would you be doing differently as mayor when it comes to pro-Palestine protests and discussion of Gaza and Israel?
Well, firstly, the mayor has created a toxic environment amongst community members and city council members as well. The issue is that rather than engaging in respectful dialogue, he's taken a my way or the highway approach, which has resulted in multiple vetoes, record number of vetoes. That could have been prevented if he did the work, meeting with all 13 ward city council members and putting in the effort to learn about the unique needs and the diversity of needs within each ward. Myself, the way I operate is that I engage with folks whether I agree with them or not. That's why our campaign has been endorsed by a whole slate of legislators at the Capitol, from the progressive wing to even the Blue Dog moderate caucus, in which we wanted to show that despite our differences, and we do at times have very strong differences, that we can work with anyone. In terms of how we go about our dialogue around Israel and Palestine, it is one that is respectful. I think that myself, being the Senate chair of the Higher Education Committee, I've heard from many students in which they want to create a sense of belonging. They want to have respectful dialogue and have leadership that meets their needs. But we've also seen that despite what you hear on social media and all the hateful comments, that our Jewish and our Muslim neighbors and students actually get along just great. And we actually have more folks that are able to call out what it is, a genocide, and speaking towards humanity and compassion.
How do you respond to some of the Jewish voters in Minneapolis, Jewish organizations, as you know, who say you're anti-Israel and that you're not the right mayor to fight anti-Semitism in this big city at this moment?
Well, I would argue that the majority of our residents, including our Jewish residents that I've encountered in Minneapolis, which makes us actually a unique city, is that they're very sympathetic to what's happening in Gaza in terms of the genocide. We just had recently a Jews for Fateh fundraiser last month, in which we had 90 to 100 Jewish neighbors come out and speaking towards some of their own experiences within the city, but also how we can connect with one another. From my personal experience, I've seen, for example, when there's an act of anti-Muslim hate in one of our mosques or our areas of worship, that is actually more Jewish neighbors and non-Muslim neighbors that show up than Muslims to these press conferences and to these events. And so we're a city and neighborhoods that care for one another.
You're running on increasing the minimum wage, making housing more affordable, reducing the cost of public colleges and universities. Now, voters in America, we're told often, are scared of a socialist candidate, don't like socialism. These are relatively popular policies when you look at the polls. How has your campaign messaged around this stuff? Do you talk openly about being a socialist? Do people say, I don't want a socialist, but I like your policies?
Well, when MAGA extremists attack us, and also at times the establishment Democrats, it's because they're scared. They're scared of the multiracial working class coalition that has been rising up in Minneapolis and in Minnesota. And they're scared of having a city where ordinary people have real power. They try to turn the words DSA or socialist into a slur. But again, what we have been asking is what's scary about having our people and our neighbors get everything that they need to survive and thrive. Things like safe housing, fair wages, dignity in the workplace. To us, that's not radical. That's common sense. And I'm not here, and we're not here to prop up the status quo. We're here to upend it, and we're here to build a city that finally works for the people that historically is left behind.
You've been the subject of some pretty racist, Islamophobic comments from the right since you announced your mayoral run. The late Charlie Kirk responded to your announcement by saying, "You need to watch this and then commit to stopping all third world immigration to America." You were obviously born in the United States of America. Last week, someone vandalized your campaign office writing, "Somali Muslim, this warning is no joke," on a window. You were born in the US, you are a citizen of this country, born and raised here, you're a resident of Minneapolis, you're a member of the state Senate. What was it like seeing some of this racist, Islamophobic and untrue propaganda thrown your way?
Well, the things that my campaign and I have experienced is not unique to me. Minnesota has experienced some of the most anti-Muslim hate in our nation. Last year in 2024, there were 16 acts of violence against mosques. And in the last 3 years, I believe that there has been 40 in total, with millions in damages, which also included 3 mosques being fully burned down. To put things into perspective, compared to the rest of the nation, for example, California, Minnesota had 16 incidents, while California only had 5, according to CARE. Which, by the way, Minnesota is also the only state in which we had a mosque that had been bombed, which occurred in 2017. So I think that there's targeting that's occurring here because of the election of very visible and very visibly Muslim people like Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Yeah.
And the successes of Muslims here make the hate towards Muslims around the country targeted here. We were the state that first elected the first Muslim congressman, Keith Ellison, in 2006.
Yes.
And we also know that Islamophobia is also racialized. Minnesota has some of the poorest and most black Muslims in the nation. Not to say that we're not welcoming here, but there is also targeting because of our success.
Earlier this week, the Minnesota chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations called for an investigation of a possible hate crime following a fire at the Al-Hikmah Mosque in Minneapolis. What's your reaction to that news? And do you think the mayor, do you think the federal and state governments are taking Islamophobia seriously enough?
I think there's a lot of work to do to be able to take it more serious. And what we have seen in this election, not only in Minnesota, but across the country, is that Republicans have been a problem, but Democrats are a problem too at times. And they have been beating the same drum as Republicans, especially during election season, as Republicans about the fear-mongering of Muslims. So we know that despite our success, our story has not been fully told and fully heard, that Muslims here are working class, mostly not affluent, but we worked hard to organize and elect folks across the various levels of government. And if there's anything radical about Muslims, it's that we have a radical inclusiveness to us. And we have proven time and time again that Muslims can be leaders here in Minneapolis and across the nation.
So the late Charlie Kirk, who we're told never insulted anyone, also tweeted that Muslims are commanded to take over the government in the land they live. The attempted Islamic takeover of America is made possible thanks to mass migration. Nowhere in your campaign have you mentioned an Islamic takeover of America. You don't even talk about Islam in your campaign, but your religion has become a major point of contention. And yet many Republicans openly campaign on making America a Christian nation. What do you make of that double standard?
Well, we know that it's been ongoing. And myself, I'm proud to have been the first Muslim elected to the Minnesota Senate in our state's history. There has been consistent ongoing hate directed towards us through social media like Twitter and so on, from folks like you mentioned, Charlie Kirk and Lauren Barber, calling us too radical and too extreme. But this is Islamophobia that we have seen ongoing, not just myself, but like I said, for all of our Muslim elected officials. And unfortunately, there hasn't been a strong enough pushback from our elected leaders, especially Democratic leaders, which to us has seemed to have enabled this kind of hate and allowed it to persist.
Do you worry about your security right now? There's a lot of hate coming your way.
Absolutely, not just for myself, but for my wife. We have a newborn at home, a 1-month-old Imran, that we're blessed to have, and we've been in conversations with Senate leadership about what we can do to protect ourselves. We've been seeing ongoing hate through our Senate emails, voicemails, on social media, getting calls from the FBI about posts that I have not even seen myself, but they've been hearing and worrying about, saying we're monitoring this. And so it's unfortunate that this kind of hate has been ongoing, again, because we have a president at the top that has enabled this and has created a political climate in which it is okay to target Muslims.
Do you agree? I mean, you're a victim of Charlie Kirk's bigotry, which we're told we're not allowed to talk about anymore because he was killed in a very brutal way. Do you agree with Ezra Klein of the New York Times, who said Charlie Kirk practiced politics the right way?
I do not. Charlie Kirk has consistently attacked not only Muslims, but some of our most vulnerable communities. And yes, it is not good to speak ill of the dead, but we can speak factually about some of the mistakes and some of the hateful rhetoric that has been told. I think that history cannot be erased, and I think it's actually very dangerous to overlook that. We have to be upfront in confronting hate, regardless of who it is, and we cannot stay silent in the face of it.
So obviously a lot of the critiques of you are racist, Islamophobic, in bad faith. But let's just talk about a legitimate good faith critique of you, of Zoran Mamdani, of others, which is you're young. I think you're 35 years old. You've been in elected office just a few years, like Zoran Mamdani. What experience, what qualifications, and I asked Zoran Mamdani the same question, what experience and qualifications do you have as a state senator in office for just 4 years, 35 years old, to be mayor of a city with 500,000 people and a $2 billion budget?
I've been honored to serve the last 5 years in the Minnesota State Senate, also as the chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee. Some of the concerns you raised is also some of the questions I've experienced on the campaign trail. And what I've been telling folks is that, well, our current mayor was also 35 years old when he first ran for mayor and won after serving one 4-year term in the city council. But the difference between us is that I have the experience on not only being a senator, but delivering on some of the most transformational pieces of legislation in our state's history, like I said, the strongest rideshare protections for our Uber and Lyft drivers, tuition-free college for working-class families, the legalization of fentanyl testing strips, in which in the first year, Hennepin County provided 1 million testing strips to folks in the county. And I can go on. And that's because our leadership and my leadership in the Senate has been rooted in community and working with people rather than keeping our power insular and within a select few.
Before we finish, we've got to talk about some of the craziness surrounding your race and the endorsement that was then rescinded. You won the endorsement of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party, the Democratic Party in the state, the DFL. It was the party's first endorsement in a mayor's race for 16 years. Then Mayor Frey's campaign challenged the endorsement, saying the electronic voting system used at the convention did not count hundreds of votes. And then they revoked your endorsement. What's your reaction to all of that?
Well, here in Minnesota, for our local elections, we don't have a primary process. We have a caucus and convention process. At the caucus, we out-organized the incumbent and every other campaign. We brought out thousands of neighbors from all 13 wards, many of whom have never caucused before. We walked away with the most delegates, and we went to the convention. And on the first ballot, we came out on top. We came out with 43% of the delegates, with the mayor coming second with 31%. Now, they're concerned about having a little over 100 delegates not being counted on the first ballot. Is very valid, and it could have been a valid argument. But the problem is that every step of the way, every campaign throughout the convention was kept up to date on what was happening throughout the tallying. After the first ballot, the parliamentarians put forward a motion to the delegates asking, do we want to redo this first vote, or do you want to move on to the second ballot? Overwhelmingly, almost the entirety of the delegation wanted to move on to a second ballot, in which we did. The mayor then had staged a walkout with his delegates, thinking that they could break quorum, in which they didn't. And then we won on that second ballot. But I think what's interesting about that is that every other race within that convention was upheld. We were the only campaign, we were the only election in which our endorsement was stripped away through, by the way, the exact same means as the other candidates and other campaigns. What we saw was that there were 28 party insiders and establishment Democrats, including many Frey donors and supporters, that met privately through the committee to overturn this endorsement, using as an excuse the
So
votes.
just to be clear, because you said it was a fair criticism of the hundreds missing, and now you're saying it was donors. Was it illegitimate, the rescinding of the endorsement in your view?
Well, it was a legitimate issue that over 100 votes had not been tallied. But because of the convention process, we had two options: redo the vote a second time, or go on to a second ballot. The delegation felt that the results would have played out the exact same way regardless.
But they didn't do that.
They did not do that because the mayor and his team made motion after motion trying to delay as much as possible the convention, hoping that it could shut down.
Do you need the DFL's endorsement to win?
What we have seen so far is that, number one, it was nice to get the resources from the DFL party and be DFL endorsed, and we worked hard to do so. Outside of my campaign, I think it spoke poorly about what happened because it took thousands of hours by many volunteers that made the caucus and convention process possible. But what we have seen is that the revocation has backfired. We've seen increase in volunteers. We have over 1,300 volunteers signed up to door knock. We've seen our donations skyrocket with small dollar donations, and name recognition also increased. And so we've been hearing on the doors that folks are ready for something new, and they're really upset about what happened at the DFL convention.
Okay. One last question to you. One of your campaign promises is to stand up to Donald Trump. What role do leaders at the state, the municipal level play in pushing back against Trump's policies, in your view? If Trump were to threaten funding, as he is doing with New York right now, to Minneapolis, federal funding because you're not complying with, say, ICE, or Minneapolis' status as a sanctuary city, how would Mayor Fateh handle that situation?
Well, as you put it, with Trump back in office, the progress that we've made for all of our communities is in great jeopardy. What I believe is that our city must act as a last line of defense, working in partnership with our county and state more than ever. And that's something that our mayor has not done. We saw ICE raid in South Minneapolis just this past June 3rd. And we saw ICE thanking MPD for their work with them. And I think that's troubling because we should be a sanctuary city. I'm the chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee, and I've seen firsthand students being picked up by ICE on our campuses, sometimes in the dead of night, with families not knowing where they're being taken to, their lawyers not knowing where they're being taken to, and campus presidents and college presidents worrying about speaking out or providing services out of fear of retaliation and losing funding. So now we're at a point in which we have a federal government telling us that we either have to sacrifice our values or risk losing funding. I think we cannot sacrifice our values because that would set a very dangerous precedent, and that would speak negatively towards all of our communities. We know we can't do this alone. We need to work cross-jurisdictionally, but we need to also work with our immigrant rights organizations that have been the boots on the ground organizations that have been providing things like know your rights counseling, legal counseling, support for our undocumented students and families in our public schools. But we also have to set clear consequences for law enforcement whenever they violate our city's separation ordinance.
Omar Fateh, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Did you like this video? Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel and turn on notifications. For exclusive content and to support our independent, unfiltered journalism, head over to zeteo.com. Your support matters.